this campaign, and I'll answer any of your questions. Several years ago, several decades ago really, Justice Blackmun, Supreme Court Justice, in one of his opinions, if my memory serves, it was upholding the majority opinion in the Barkley case, which was a challenge to affirmative action. Justice Blackmun said in that opinion that in order for us to get beyond race, we must first take race into account. Now I want us to think about that. You don't solve a problem by ignoring the problem or by pretending the problem does not exist. You first must admit that you got a problem. And then you sit down and do what you can to solve the problem. That is what the South Carolina legislature did some 30 years ago. It admitted that it had a problem. And they sat down to redraw congressional district lines in such a way that it would help overcome that problem, get us beyond the race. And we have been progressing over the last 30 years to that point. And so the legislature has just redrawn the congressional districts for the upcoming election. And I want all of you to take into account that the 6th congressional district is no longer a majority black district. It is not a majority black district. Less than 48% African American. Why? Because we are in this state doing great work to get beyond race. And I wish that we would stop taking this into account when we talk about these things. Now, why do I feel as comfortable as I do that we will soon see that people are going to be more and more judging candidates based upon the content of their service. And I want to say that again. The content of their service. I know everybody took a hard look at my record of service. In fact, I saw when I got to the office today an article from the Wall Street Journal, a big picture of me standing adjacent to the statue of Pierre Lafont. Pierre Lafont was a Frenchman that came to this country and really was the original designer of Washington, D.C. Now, Lafont was a very smart guy, an architect, trained by his father over in France. And so he comes to the United States to assist in fighting the Revolutionary War. Lafont came here. He was injured during that war down in Savannah, was captured down in Charleston and held prisoner in Charleston. But when the war was over, he went back to France, but George Washington asked him to come back and help design the capital city on the banks of the Potomac River. Lafont was a smart guy who got along well with numbers and things like that. Didn't get along well with people. So as smart as he was, he just could not get along with the 3-member commission that was running Washington, D.C. at the time. And Lafont was fired from his job. And so he left Washington with all of his plans that he had developed for the city. Took them with him. And people were wondering, well, what are we going to do now? Well, step forward was a guy named Benjamin Banneker, a black guy, who had read the plans, who understood the plans. And he sat down and said, well, don't worry about him taking the plans. I got this. And he, from his memory, laid down the plans. And that's how Washington, D.C. got laid out. Now I'll tell that story because we have to learn that we can benefit from each other irrespective of race or gender. And so that's what my campaign is all about. That's what my service has been all about. And I'll close with this and answer any question you may have. I began last month, Black History Month, with a speech at Gonzaga High School. When I got to the high school that morning, I noticed that an unusual number of parents were in attendance. And I immediately felt that everybody was a bit anxious about Black History Month, because all this stuff about so-called critical race theory taking over the gubernatorial election there in Virginia and becoming such an issue all across the country. And so I decided, as I just said in the outset here, not to avoid the problem, but to confront it. When I stood before the students that day, I said to them, I know that you have been hearing all of these discussions about critical race theory. So let me tell you something. Theory is reserved for colleges and universities. At the high school level, where I once taught, we taught facts, and we still teach facts. So let's talk about some critical race facts. And I shared with them the story of Thomas Edison, who we all say was the greatest inventor, the American inventor of all times. And we credit him with inventing the light bulb. And I said to those students, I said, you know, as I look up at these lights and we think about Thomas Edison, it's a fact that he invented the light bulb. But it's also a fact he couldn't get it to work properly. And it was not until he went up to Boston, Massachusetts and sat down with a guy named Louis Latimer, a black guy, the son of former slaves, who had invented something called a filament. Thomas Edison encouraged Louis Latimer to let his filament be used in his light bulb. That's how the light bulb worked. And Thomas Edison, the white guy, sat down with Louis Latimer, the black guy, and they got beyond their comfort zones and brought together the greatest invention of all times. That's what we have to do as a country. That's what we have to do as a state. And that's what I've been dedicating myself to for the last 29 plus years. And that's what the state and the nation can expect from me going forward. I'll answer the question.